My name is Mike Kappus. I grew up in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Somehow, when I was about 14 years old, I saw Roy Orbison at the height of his Pretty Woman stage at our high school, Regis High School. I was a freshman. Somehow I was assigned some task. It's always foggy to me now, but somehow I remember going out into his Airstream trailer, which was his dressing room, doing some little errand or something. But that was pretty foggy, and I didn't really connect too much with the music at the time. I was a fan of different types of music, but Eau Claire, Wisconsin, 90 miles from Minneapolis. I had very little money. I was thinking so small time that I thought I would never actually see anything special. I would only read about it or hear about it. And one time in college, I became a big music fan, but I thought I could actually go to Minneapolis. I could actually see a real professional concert. And I went to Minneapolis, saw at the Guthrie Theater, saw the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band opening for Steve Miller. And I was blown away by how great music could be produced. And as I came back, and within 3 months, my first concert that I was promoting with friends was taking place. This was college friends. We had kind of an anti-fraternity called People's Choice. We drew names out of a glass, and the loser had to be the head of the organization and everything. Anyway, we put on some concerts. I've still got ticket number 1 from my first concert. It was the Tongue and Soup? Soup and Tongue Band, I guess. And it was $1 in advance, $1.25 at the door. So big motivation to buy in advance. Anyway, I started promoting shows with my friends, and then connecting with other people. As soon as I promoted a show or two, other bands in the city wanted me to help them out. And I somehow connected with youth organizations in the area and got shows.
And what year was that?
This is 1970 when I started promoting. And I had connected with these friends, got jobs for friends at community youth organizations around the Eau Claire area, found some clubs where they could use a little better contact for bigger names, started booking groups from Appleton, from Minneapolis, and from Milwaukee. One of my best friends in college was Mary Ketting, and her boyfriend was Bob Metzger, and I was promoting a show with Ted Nugent at the State Theater in Eau Claire, and we decided it'd be a good idea to try to bring in her boyfriend's band, the Ox. And so we booked them and got to know them a little bit, and it grew to booking other shows with the Ox and Hound Dog Band and some other people in the Eau Claire area. And Bob Dickey called me one day, I believe, and suggested if I wanted to come to Milwaukee and join the agency, TGC, Thomas Gus Cavaliers, that I could come down, and this is August of '71, and I was between junior and senior years of high school. I thought I'd come down for a couple weeks, learn a little bit about the business, and then go back to my next year of college. And I came down and I got very addicted to it. The money was fantastic. It was $0 a week versus 30% of commissions. Raised to $30 a week at a certain point when I proved myself. Anyway, it was really fun and addicting, and I moved into the apartment I didn't know where to go, and I guess Bob Dickey helped set me up with a place to live, which was in the basement apartment at Kane Place with Bob Dickey and Bob Metzger, and I had a little not really bedroom that I stayed in, which was, but it was all great. It was my first time moving away from home, and Kane Place was amazing. There was, I think, 20 apartments with about 12 apartments of people that were all similar age, number of people in music, in groups, everybody connected. We'd have these games of Risk in one apartment at another, different times, everybody gathered together. Our basement apartment had a door. You could open the door from my bedroom and you were in the basement, and you could go one way and go up into one apartment. You could go the other direction to the other end of the building and go up into a bunch of other apartments where Rich Deemer and various other people lived. Anyway, it was a fantastic place. We were just talking here about Tom and Mary Kay Hayes were the managers of the building. At a certain point, Mary Kay was making meals for us. We'd pay her $1 early in the day, the morning or whatever. She'd count up the number of dollars and the number of people that wanted a meal that night. She'd go out and buy food, and then that night we'd come back with our empty plate, and she'd fill our plate with steak, potatoes, a vegetable, always a great, well-rounded meal. Amazing at any price for us to get good meals. These guys who were not exactly millionaires, living in the basement apartment and everything. And we got a wonderful meal for $1. And she bought so right that she and Tom were able to eat for free on all that leftover money from $1 apiece from us. Fantastic place, and we had 2 different fires there. It was really interesting to see what happened when a fire came. What would people do? And I had a hard time buying clothes, so I grabbed my clothes right away. This is after we moved the drum kit and the amplifiers out of the living room into the parking lot. I didn't have much besides clothes anyway, except a stereo. John Paris was smart. He'd grab photos because they're irreplaceable, and everybody else grabbed something else. Interesting experiences, and several bands, the Ox, the Hound Dog Band, a few other bands were represented in the building, and Kim Jorgensen, Fritz Bluebottom himself was in the building, which is a whole entire story. I think maybe I'll stick to mine for now, unless you want the Kim Jorgensen story. But
now, what was the address of the building?
15 something Kane Place. I forget, 1525 maybe, Kane Place, something like that.
Yeah, 1860 North Prospect was the front side.
Okay. So anyway, I work at TGC for several months, and I'm feeling like I'm not really, I was doing very well, but I think I was running the costs up a bit for the amount of money while I brought in more revenue, I was always also having more costs. I was on the phone like crazy, and it wasn't that cheap then. And then my boss decided maybe he'd rearrange our arrangement a little bit, which was not in my favor. And since my pay was based upon bookings into the future, my pay would come in the future. So I said, if I quit, will you pay me? And he said, yes. And I said, okay, I quit. And I went home and to our basement apartment, called my mother, said, I'm coming back, I'll go to school next semester. This is December of '71. I'd been there about 4 months. And started to grab my stuff to pack up my red Chevy van. And Mark Sychek, who doesn't remember this, but I swear it's true, Mark Sychek stopped me and said, what if we left the agency too and you managed us, the Ox and the Hound Dog Band? And I said, that sounds possible, that sounds good, So it took them a couple days of discussions and voting between the bands to decide whether or not to go ahead with this, which I couldn't believe. I was this kid in college who came down and months into his career as a booking agent, and they're leaving what I thought was an established agency for me. So they voted to let me manage them. And my idea was to go to Contemporary Talent, who I knew did a lot of regional work in schools and everything, have them book that area, the schools in the southern Wisconsin, then go to maybe Blytham Entertainment or Azoff Goldstein, Irving Azoff's company in Peoria, I think it was, Illinois, and have them do other things. And I went to Contemporary Talent first, and they said, yeah, we'd be happy to take on the Ox and the Hound Dog Band, but we'd like you as an agent too. So I signed in there as an agent. Charlie Fain was the head of the company. At the time, he was the entertainment director for Summerfest. So the very next Summerfest, he had jobs, extra things that needed to be done. I managed the rock stage at Summerfest, where the Messengers were playing the day before they went to Japan. There was like a tornado swept through the grounds. This is when the dressing area was a hanging plastic tent. And so if a wind came along, the walls would flow right up horizontal. And the wind came on, and they decided it was not safe anymore to be on stage. They pulled their van up behind the stage and started loading it up, and all of a sudden the roof flew off and over their van and behind their van, and the 3 walls, which are just the tackiest little walls, went down, each one of them. They managed to get everything out. They had to dry their equipment out overnight before they went to Japan the next day. And the next day, in between sets, they were pounding in the last nails to put the walls back up. Anyway, lots of great Summerfest experiences. The next year, managing a jazz stage and being the last person to work with Cannonball Adderley. Calling in a doctor when he needed a doctor, just thinking he had some stomach problem. He was there 2 days, had the doctor in between. He was doing a clinic in downtown Milwaukee and played his second night, went on to Indianapolis and passed away. Anyway, I've got a million experiences, but just back to my thing, I guess I worked in Milwaukee for 5 years, from '71 to '76 then. We would do whatever we could to make money, basically, I guess. I mean, it was within our, not necessarily even within our taste realm, I guess. But we would buy talent for clubs or festivals that didn't have the connections on their own. And I worked with Teddy's, which is now Shank Hall. I worked with them very heavily, bringing in all of their national talent, which was most of the touring blues names, short of B.B. King. Had Muddy Waters there the week that his wife died. It was a 5 or 6 night gig. His wife died in the middle of the week. He took that night off, came back and finished the rest of the week. It was very down sets, but he did it. We had Howlin' Wolf in there in his later years when he was on dialysis and very, very weak. He did a set and didn't really have the energy to leave, go anywhere and come back, so they brought the lights down. He stayed on stage. Next set, they turn the lights up. He's still there. Starts the next set. Just amazing experiences. And I met, and actually I was bringing people in. I'd call some people and ask about playing Summerfest or Teddy's, and they'd say, well, it's very isolated. We'd love to come in there, but we'd have to have something to go with it. So little by little, I made relationships with people in my hometown. Tiny club there would bring things in. Iowa City, Minneapolis, various other places. I booked another club in Chicago for a while as their talent buyer. So I developed a circuit which little by little grew and grew and grew, to the point where when I left Milwaukee I was booking Eddie Harris everywhere but the West Coast. I was booking John Lee Hooker everywhere east of Colorado. Mose Allison, most of the country. And I made all these relationships at Teddy's. For the most part, I also booked people at Hump and Hannah's, and well, all over the clubs, but these were the ones that brought in more name entertainment. And the Stone Toad, which got tricky, the Stone Toad, Hump and Hannah's, and Teddy's all wanted some of the same artists, so I had to just do my best not to alienate people and do the job. Whoever asked first, I'd try to follow through on. Anyway, I established some great relationships there. I later became the agent for people that I booked there, being John Hyatt, Willie Dixon, Muddy Waters, John Lee Hooker, Mose Allison. Various others became my clients later on. Well, it may have happened in a different way, but my first connection with them was at Teddy's. And so it's amazing that we're having this reunion, and Teddy's has become Shank Hall, and we're reuniting everybody at this place where I'd really, not only that, but from the time Mark Sychek stopped me, or the time that I came to Milwaukee, was August 1971, exactly 40 years ago from a month from now.
I want you to talk about the reunion.
Okay, so fast forward, I maybe should say something about it. I moved to San Francisco. I was invited to come there. Actually, I had this connection with Eddie Harris. I was thinking of leaving Milwaukee, getting to a bigger market. And he was being booked by a company in San Francisco that was an offshoot of the Keystone Corner Jazz Club called Keystone Music. And he said I could, well, first of all, he wanted me to move into his own house and set up agency there, and I didn't think that was the wisest move. So he connected me with his agents on the West Coast, and I came there to book for them. I was still booking a stage at Summerfest here, which I'd grown into doing, booking all of the entertainment for Schlitz stage here, booking a club still in Milwaukee, bringing in major names. At that time, Sugar Mountain was a club that I was bringing in jazz and blues artists for, in particular, but also a wide variety of others. So I moved to San Francisco. That company was very disorganized. They never paid me. They never paid the phone bill. I came to the office one day, a few months after being there, and the phones were cut off because the phone company wasn't paid. So went home and started dialing. I was managing John Hyatt at the time. Eddie Harris was a solid client, so they were immediate automatic artists. I called up Mike Bloomfield, who was on the roster there, but I'd not really talked to him much. We talked for 45 minutes, and he said, "You're the most logical agent I've ever talked to. I'll do everything with you." So anyway, established the Rosebud Agency. It's been 35 years now and a really wonderful run. Our artists have had 108 Grammy nominations, I think, and 24 wins. That given a very small roster, the idea was to keep it very small and focused. Anyway, over the years, I talked to Kim Jorgensen several times, and it's talked about who had put on these shows in Milwaukee with maybe the Ox, the Hound Dog Band, Omaha, on Halloween or other special occasions, and then he would headline as Fritz Bluebottom and the Electric Shit Band, and utilizing the various members of these other bands as his band, writing new songs every year and learning a new instrument every year. And an amazing character. His last show, he'd already moved to Los Angeles, and so I organized the show until the last week or so when he was able to come back to Milwaukee. We used the Oriental Theater. We sold, and we had a Halloween, it was Halloween, we had a costume contest, so people in costumes, dressed crazy. We sold it out, and people kept coming in. And so, being idiot amateurs that we were, we thought, we have the tickets here that we just took in, people want to come in, so we resold the tickets we'd already sold and overloaded the theater. It was a total mess. I got a call the next week from the theater owners with a gigantic bill for garbage removal. The owner of the theater came down by the stage door at the end of the night, and I was talking with a guy from Omaha and a couple other guys, I guess. Somebody was drinking a beer, and the owner was so frustrated, he said, when you're done with that beer, make sure you smash it against the wall. So, anyway, so fast forward many years later, talking to Kim Jorgensen, who I'd stayed in touch with, and we talked about how it'd be great to be able to reassemble all these people from Milwaukee. And he agreed, we both agreed, and neither one of us did anything about it. 2 or 3 times maybe over the years we talked about this, and neither of us really did anything about it. And this past year, Bob Dickey posted some pictures on Facebook, including one from this apartment building in Kane Place of our big apartment that went from one end of the building to the other, one side of the building to the other, with everybody's tables lined up end to end with our bed sheets over them, making one long tablecloth, and for a big Thanksgiving dinner. And he posted that, and I mentioned to Bob about this conversations with Fritz Bluebottom, Kim Jorgensen, who at that point I thought had passed away about 10 years ago. And it had traction with Bob. And I'm not sure the exact things that followed. Maybe he's got a better memory about it than I do. One of those things where you remember the distant past better. But anyway, one thing led to another. We reached out, found out that a lot of people were really into getting together and bringing the bands together. And it was early enough that I was able to contact Summerfest, and they had space and the interest in booking Ox and Hound Dog Band at Summerfest, so we booked these shows, and then we checked on beyond those 2 bands, gathering more of the people, and Shank Hall, the former Teddy's, was available the next night, so we booked that and kept reaching out. Dynamite Duck with John Paris and Jim Solberg, Mark Lillis, who I've known since kindergarten, Jeff Hilgertz, who I've known from 7th grade, and then a couple people that were really inspirations to me. Short Stuff. The first time I saw Short Stuff in Eau Claire, I came up to Junior Brantley after the first set and said, really effing great. I just had never heard blues so direct from the source before. I'd heard it through Willie Dixon via Led Zeppelin, via Jeff Beck and everything. And I was just knocked out with them. So it was a treat to work with them then, and an amazing treat to have them be part of this now. It's a totally incredible thing that 40 years later, all of these people are live, available on the same weekend, on the July 4th weekend, to come together. And we're all thrilled to see each other again. Considerably less hair than our long hair days, but it's really a gas. And it's yet to happen, but people have been gathering and rehearsing, and we're all thrilled.
Is there any advice you'd like to give to someone who might be watching this who wants to pursue their own music career?
Things have changed since I started in music. I started in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, where nothing else was happening, which on the good side was no competition. On the bad side was that people were not accustomed to going out and paying an extra higher amount of money to see music because they were used to just local bands. But I just absorbed everything I possibly could. At that time I was going into a library and somehow find a directory of representatives of musicians and everything. Nowadays, of course, the internet, you can find everything, which is good again because everybody can find it, and challenging again because anybody else can do it and be your competition. And anywhere there's something happening, there's people already doing it. But the one area that I've done almost all of the 40 years has been managing artists, and there's still a big shortage of good managers who just have the common sense and connections, but it's challenging to, if you're starting out with someone unknown, there's also no money either, and but just absorb everything absolutely possible that you can, be as knowledgeable as you can, and that's a big start, and then be reliable. In this business, there's a lot of people that are not reliable, If you don't say if you do whatever you say you're going to do, then you stand out from so much of the pack. So the more you're reliable, the more people say, this person takes care of business, good person to work with, whatever. And so just being knowledgeable as possible, being reliable as possible, helps a lot.
And what is it that a manager does?
Well, I can compare it to booking agent. For one thing, I've been both almost all of the time, except for a few years not managing. Booking agent coordinates the live dates of an artist, and ideally, if you're touring nationally or internationally, you make sure that the stops between cities are reasonable for driving or traveling, however, that the venue is the proper venue for the artist to perform in, that it's got the right audience, the right clientele. If you're combining with other groups, that you're combined with the right groups, and that the audience is compatible. The audience that likes one group is going to like the other group, and ideally expand the audience of the smaller group to win over the fans of the larger group. But a manager, so the agent is primarily live performance coordination, filling their calendar with the appropriate kind of performances. The manager does everything else, basically, and helps with what the agent is doing. The manager is the funnel of information between the artist and the rest of the world. The artist wants this, we want that. The manager can say, well, we can do this. He advises the artist, first of all, what is and is not realistic, what would be a good career plan, short and long term. But he can hire, and the management role varies from artist to artist. You can have the Backstreet Boys who their manager is outfitting them and telling them dance steps and hiring people for the music and so on. Or the manager could be Eric Clapton's manager, maybe, who that manager doesn't say a word about the music. Eric is in charge of that, and so you determine between you what's needed and what the manager should do. But usually the manager is communicating with a lawyer, an accountant, setting up merchandising deals, publishing deals, communicating with the agent, maybe setting up sponsorship deals, everything else involved in an artist's career. So they'll reach out, they'll find out all the opportunities and the deals that are available, and then bring them back to the artist, depending again on the relationship. Sometimes a manager will make those deals on their own, sometimes they'll bring them back to the artist for the artist to choose between the options and choose what they want to do.
Okay, is there anything else you'd like to say before we shut off the machine?
A huge thank you to everybody involved. Jim Charney here, who's been very helpful with legal concerns here, hosting this wonderful party. Bob Dickey has carried a huge weight in coordinating a lot of different things, going back to taking this seriously in the first place and moving along. Ed Sassone has been incredible as far as taking care of so many things, being our rare, still Milwaukee resident with all the connections here for people and equipment and everything else. So it's been a team effort, and Bob Metzger on the creative side, it's been fantastic, and it hasn't even started. I said months ago when we got this thing rolling, even if it all canceled right now, just getting us all to talk with each other and connect with each other again was a huge success, and it's been fun. It's been really a lot of fun.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.